Hello all friends. Welcome to meet again on the Aldi TV channel. Let's find interesting things in the following video. Don't forget to press the like, share and subscribe buttons. Happy following. 12 tips for buying a used car so you don't get fooled. Not enough money to buy a new car. You can buy a quality used car. Here are tips for buying the safest used. Tips on buying a used car are not as easy as one might imagine, because they have to go through the right process. There are many advantages to buying a used car over a new car. One of them is that you can immediately use it. And the most important thing is that the selling price of a used car is of course cheaper and you don't have to worry about the tax price being so expensive. Because every year there is a possibility that the annual tax can be reduced depending on how much the tax price of the new vehicle is owned. Especially for those of you who don't have much money saved, maybe buying a used car is an option instead of having to buy a new car at a higher price. But is it right to buy a used car in its current condition? Please note, even though you can save expenses, there are a number of challenges when buying a used car. Of course, buying a used car must be full of caution. Rushing into buying can result in future losses. Especially for those of you who still don't understand about choosing a used car for beginners or how to check the used car engine itself. There are several things to consider when buying a used car. The goal is not to remain financially safe. In the following, Koala will tell you the things that must be considered when deciding to buy the safest used car. 1. Adjust to the budget you have. Before choosing a used car that you want to buy, the first tip for buying an automatic or manual car is knowing how much the car you want to buy costs. So that you can plan the payment scheme from the start and it won't interfere with your finances in the future. There are 2 ways to do this, including used car loans. Tips on buying a used car online or offline with credit that you must pay attention to is how much interest is charged. Generally, buying a used car tends to have a higher interest rate, which can reach 6% compared to a new car, usually only 3%. For that, it's better if you pay a sizable down payment or you can choose a fairly long installment period. However, costs like this will be covered by tax costs which tend to be stable every year and can even decrease depending on the year the car product is released. However, there are things that need to be considered and not be the main choice if you buy a used car on credit. There are strong reasons why it is not advisable to buy a used car on installment or credit, namely that monthly expenses can swell even more. There are 2 ways to measure the ability to buy a car. First, make sure that the emergency fund is not used to buy the used car, and secondly, make sure that when buying it in cash, the amount of current assets is still in the range of 15% to 20% of net worth. The emergency fund here is a cash deposit that can be used only in emergency situations, such as in the event of termination of employment or a family member has an accident or is seriously ill. Also pay attention to the monthly installments. Also make sure the monthly installments do not exceed 35% of monthly income, and the total debt in arrears does not exceed 50% of the total asset value. Car over credit. Over credit for used cars can be done provided that they do not make transactions without a financial institution acting as an extension. Generally, in the future, if the authorities do not know about it, the difficulties encountered or when processing documents is prone to problems. Over credit under the hand does look faster, but it is still weak from a legal standpoint. This action is actually an act that is prohibited by law. This car over credit law is bound by a fiduciary guarantee agreement in Law No. 42 of 1999 concerning fiduciary guarantees, fiduciary law. In Article 23 paragraph 2 of the fiduciary law it states that the fiduciary giver is prohibited from transferring, pawning, or renting to other parties objects which are objects of fiduciary collateral which are not supply objects, except with prior written approval from the fiduciary recipient. 2. Do a survey directly before buying. The most important tip for buying a used car online is to do a place survey. Place surveys can be done with offline dealers. This will make it easier for you to get a quality used car. Conversely, if you only check availability via the website or online, there is a high potential for fraud in the condition of the car. For that, it's a good idea to check online or offline to verify the availability of existing cars. 3. Check who the seller is before the transaction. Used car buyers are usually impatient and tend to rush in looking for the car they have been eyeing, even though what is good is to search patiently and thoroughly. This is so that buyers get used cars that are healthy and primed. Not only that, the buyer must also be careful about the identity of the seller before making a transaction. Because there is a possibility of fraud, whether the money was taken away or other crimes. If you really feel that it suits the car you are targeting, it is better for you to establish a relationship with the seller to verify the information on the car you are looking for. Because there are several cars that are sold by depositing them at the dealer. Therefore, try to check why this car is being sold. Why is the car being sold by deposit? Many also directly negotiate with the seller. But it's a good idea to first see the car you are looking for, then make an offer. 4. Tips for buying a used car. Check the exterior condition of the car. Not only the seller, things that need to get further checks are on the body and exterior of the car. You need to pay attention to every component of the car body. Are they still visible and can function properly? Don't forget, also pay attention if there are traces of repair or uneven paint quality. Make sure all body components are still in complete condition. Another detail that is usually overlooked is checking the gaps in the body and the condition of the engine room and under the car. Here are some detailed components that you must check before buying your target used car. Car body. Make sure the car has not undergone excessive modifications to the structure, color or engine inside. Also avoid choosing a modified car if you are really interested in using it for your mobility. It's a good idea to check the components that have just been repaired, because they could be traces of collisions or scratches indicating an accident. Car engine. Open the hood and try to pay attention if the engine is not maintained. Usually the remnants of dust will be visible. Then, sound the engine 5 to 10 minutes and open the hood to hear if the engine sound is smooth or choked. If it is stuck, then there is a possibility that the car engine is not working properly. You can also see it by checking the color of the smoke the car emits. Car batteries and fluids. The battery functions to supply electrical power to the components in the car. The tip for buying a used car online or offline this time is to make sure that the car you want to buy doesn't have a bad battery. Usually marked by car lights that are not as bright as usual. Likewise with the sound of a horn that seems to be fading. Suspension. Problematic car suspension can be seen from the car that is not balanced, aka tilted. Generally, it is caused because the car often lifts heavy loads. And it can also steer. The car tends to be more difficult to drive in low conditions. Another thing that can be considered is when closing the rear trunk of the car. When you try to close it, you see that the car tends to sway, so this could be due to the car's suspension being damaged. Car tires. The problem of a flat tire seems trivial, but if you ignore it too often it can damage the car's suspension. Moreover, it is indicated that it can endanger the safety of drivers and passengers, especially when passing through potholes. So, if you find car tires that are not operating properly, then reconsider buying the used car. Because afterwards, of course you will need scouring to fix it. Car brake pads. The car's handbrake and all the brake parts in the car are the most important things to recognize how it works. If you feel that the car's brakes are not too firm, it could be that the problem that arises is the brake pads that are starting to decrease. So, the tips for buying a used car online or offline this time are to check the service book and history of maintenance that has been done. So that you don't have trouble, use a flashlight and see to make sure if the brake pads have reduced thickness, approximately 1/4 is left. You also need to be more sensitive to the brake pads. If a squeaking sound occurs when braking, you need to replace them. 5. Check the condition of the complete accessories and car interior. Next, when you are going to check the condition of the car, start by checking the interior of the car. There are many interior components that need to be checked for their function. For example, air conditioners, audio systems, and light switches. You also have to make sure all features work properly, especially security features such as seat belts. After that, also pay attention to the condition of the car interior. Try sitting in the front and back seats. Are they still comfortable? Check the condition of the dashboard, ceiling and carpet. Also pay attention to the smell of the interior. Does the interior smell musty? If so, this could be an indication that the car has been in a flood. 6. Ask about engine performance. The engine is an important part of the car checking process. Checking the performance of the engine on a used car must be careful and thorough. Also check thoroughly for oil leaks in the engine block or other components. After that, you can do a test drive if the showroom or dealer or seller asks prospective buyers to try the car. During the test drive, pay close attention, starting from the vehicle speed, gas pull, condition of the brakes, transmission, to the feet per car. That way you can judge whether the used car is still comfortable or not. Here's how to check a used car engine that needs to be considered during a test drive. Turn on the car engine. Then, pay attention to the sound of the engine running. If the engine sounds smooth, not rough, and the car starts easily, it means that the engine is still in good condition. Conversely, if the car sounds rough, then ask the owner or seller of the car why something like this is happening and check for damage. If this happens, you need to reconsider buying the car. 7. Check vehicle service history. We recommend that before buying a used car, you can ask about its service history. Because this will make it easier for you if the used car you bought is diligently maintained at an official repair shop. You can also determine the condition of your target car by checking the vehicle service history. Also pay attention to whether the previous owner has carried out periodic maintenance with discipline and is well documented in the service records or book. If in the end you find that the car has been repaired due to an accident, flood or not being maintained properly, then you should just avoid it. 8. Tips for buying a used car by doing a test drive. The next step when checking and wanting to buy a used car is to do a test drive. Trusted dealers will usually allow prospective buyers to do a test drive. Usually, you can do a test drive at home by making an appointment first. After the agreement is agreed, the dealer will take the car home for a test drive. Do tests on various road conditions and speeds, so you can understand and know the actual condition of the car. 9. Examine the completeness of the letters. Vehicle documents are important things that you must also examine and pay attention to when buying a used car. Make sure you get the original BPKB and STNK. Pay attention and examine the authenticity of the BPKB and STNK of the used car, because currently there are lots of counterfeit securities circulating so that stolen cars can sell at high prices. You also have to make sure that the car you are going to buy has a BPKB and STNK with the owner's real name. Thus, the original and complete BPKB and STNK will make it easier for you to transfer your name and other administrative matters. 10. Bring an expert mechanic or friend on surveys. The role of a mechanic or your expert friend here is one of the tips for buying a quality used car online or offline. If you are still a beginner in the automotive world, you don't need to worry when you want to buy a used car. Because, you can still bring an expert mechanic or a friend who already understands cars and their components. With the expertise they have, mechanics can detect the condition of the used car, including if there will be damage or deficiencies later. This is also one way to check used car engines. Tips on buying a used car online or offline on this one are important so that you are not easily tempted by promotions from sellers. With the help of an expert mechanic, you will feel more confident in buying the chosen used car that you have been eyeing for a long time. 11. Make sure the used car is not flooded. You also have to make sure that the used car you are going to buy has never been flooded. The first thing you can do is ask the owner whether or not the car has been in a flood. Then, check all parts of the car whether there are characteristics indicating that the car has been flooded or not. To check whether the car has ever been flooded, check if the interior smells musty or not. If it smells musty, then there is an indication that the car has been submerged in flood water. You can also pay attention to whether there are rusty parts, unpleasant odors, mud or dirt deposits, as well as engine and electrical disturbances. Here are 7 characteristics of used cars affected by flooding that you can pay attention to so you don't buy the wrong used car. There are problems with the electronics in the car, from the device to the electrical system. There are silt deposits in interior corners and hidden engine parts. There is a mixture of water in the car engine oil because flood water enters the reservoir. There is rust that looks new on various sides of the car. Car has bad smell. Even though this can be overcome by washing the car to the interior, you still have to make sure. Make sure the area of origin of the car. If it comes from a flooded area, you have to be more careful in researching it. The price is too cheap. Because they want to be sold and dispersed quickly, used flooded cars are usually set at very low prices. 12. Pay attention to the insurance that is in the car. Even though it is used, the car purchased must also be protected by insurance. Because it is not certain that the used car purchased is protected by car insurance. So, as a new owner, you must provide protection for the car in order to avoid financial losses from the risks that arise later.